The millionaire's daughter married a village tractor driver out of spite for her father. When the father came to talk to him, the young man's words brought the wealthy man to his knees. Scarlett, her eyes flashing with fury, carefully outlined the contour of her lips with a pencil. Each time, it didn't turn out right. She looked at herself for a few seconds, then meticulously wiped the pencil off her lips and tried again to do it properly. On the 5th try, she got it the way she wanted. With a sigh, she put the pencil aside and picked up the lipstick. After applying the lipstick, she looked intently at her reflection, then muttered, "Damn it." A few seconds later, with a furious groan, she threw the lipstick with all her might to the other side of the room. The cap flew under the bed, and the tube lay on the floor, its red contents gleaming. Scarlett stared at it for a couple of minutes, then groaned, "Oh no, this is just unbearable." She covered her face with her hands and leaned on her dressing table. For a while she sat there, slightly shaking her head, then took a deep breath. "Scarlett, get a grip. You're acting like a brainless teenager, and you're already 22 years old," she said quietly. She sighed again and removed her hands from her face. Looking at herself in the mirror, she snorted bitterly. "Why do I even need this lipstick? Am I not good enough without it? Who am I dolling up for? For Xavier? Let him see me as I am. I'll wipe it all off." She took some wet wipes from the pack and began to carefully wipe the lipstick off her lips. Then she hesitated for a few seconds and wiped her entire face with them. After a few minutes, she looked at herself with satisfaction. "That's perfect. I'll go like this. I don't care what people think of me. Maybe they'll understand that this is how I'm protesting against all of this." Her tattooed eyebrows stood out on her pale face, and her own eyelashes were long. She didn't need mascara. She looked slightly ill, young, but very beautiful and tender. Only the anger. The anger prevented her from seeing her beauty. Scarlett thought she looked very intimidating now. Deep down, she knew that her appearance wouldn't deter Xavier. He had seen her almost without makeup. But it was worth a try. Who knows, maybe he'd give up on his idea because he'd see once again that she wouldn't agree. Maybe he will give up, but our fathers? Unlikely. It's okay. I'll think of something. Otherwise, it wouldn't be me. "Are you ready?" Scarlett heard from behind the door. She looked at the door with disdain. Oh, how she wished not to answer, but what would that change? Nothing. If necessary, he'd drag her by force. She didn't doubt it. It's inappropriate not to come to a scheduled dinner. Her unwillingness wasn't a valid reason for absence. "Ready. I'll be downstairs in 2 minutes," she replied coldly. She heard footsteps. Her father was going downstairs. Scarlett looked at herself in the mirror once more. "I should have worn a simpler dress, but it's too late now. No time to change." She'd spend half an hour looking for a simpler outfit, but she could change her hairstyle in a minute. She quickly gathered her wavy curls into a tight high ponytail and then made a bun. "That'll be perfect. Some dark glasses, and it'll be super. Just what I need." She looked like a widow who had just buried her husband. What a hoot! If Sophia saw me now, she'd be shocked that Scarlett is going to the most expensive restaurant in the city looking like this. She grabbed her purse and went downstairs to her father. Ben looked at Scarlett attentively and frowned. She looked at him defiantly, her head held high. "Is this some kind of protest? And do you think we'll stay home just because you didn't tidy yourself up? You're mistaken. We're going to the restaurant right now. It's your choice how to look. I don't care, even if you're covered in mud. We'll still be at the dinner. Let's go." And he headed for the exit. Scarlett, pressing her lips together and clutching her purse, followed him. In the car, they rode in silence. The driver kept glancing at them in the mirror with a puzzled look. Usually they talked non-stop, but now they turned their heads away from each other. It was clear they were both displeased. Scarlett thought about how she was once again trying to get her way. But with her father, this trick didn't work. He was like a concrete wall. You couldn't prove anything to him or bring him to a compromise. He stood his ground. She had told him many times that she didn't like Xavier, all to no avail. He had one response to that. You don't like him now, but you'll get used to it later. Yes. At first, she was flattered by his attention. He had been hanging around her for almost a year, and Scarlett flirted with him, went on dates. She even flew to Europe with him once for a vacation, and everything was great until her father told her she had to marry him. That was 3 months ago, and everything went downhill. I don't want to marry him, Dad. Why do you say it to me as if my opinion doesn't matter at all? Are we in the Middle Ages? What else have you come up with? No, and that's final. Scarlett was agitated, but her father listened to her quite calmly, and after her angry tirade, he quietly said, "Calm. Down first, and then we'll talk. Xavier's father and I have already discussed everything. This marriage suits both of us. Xavier has always liked you. He likes this arrangement. So all that's left is to decide when the celebration will be." Scarlett was beside herself with anger. What? All that's left is to decide when the celebration will be? And what? No one is going to ask me? No proposal needed? Wonderful. I'm just merchandise to you, Dad. How did you come to this? Of course he'll propose to you and you'll accept it, dear, replied Ben. Scarlett looked out the window and sighed. Her father glanced at her, then turned away again. Ben was sure he'd get his way. He always did, and Scarlett would have to give in. She'd later understand that he wanted happiness for her. Yes, of course, he didn't forget about business. Naturally, this marriage was very beneficial to him. He already had quite successful business relations with James, but his partner hinted he wanted to retire. That's when Andre came up with the idea of marrying their only heirs. If Xavier married Scarlett, James would have no choice. The business would become a family affair, and Xavier would take his father's place. And Xavier, by the way, was a good guy, and Andre had a good relationship with him. This marriage was very advantageous, only Scarlett didn't yet understand that it would have many benefits for her too. At first, Andre listed all of them, but his daughter didn't want to hear anything. She kept repeating only one thing. She didn't want to marry Xavier, and that was it. Andre frowned, remembering the scene his daughter made 2 months ago. That's when Xavier proposed to her. Scarlett, with a sweet smile on her face and in a sugary voice, refused him. It was a big surprise for Xavier. He thought the girl had long understood where his courtship and expensive gifts were leading, but she made it clear that she didn't even consider him as a potential husband. Oh, how embarrassed Andre was in front of James then. His daughter shouldn't have embarrassed him like that. When James called him and said that Scarlett clearly made it known to Xavier that marriage between them was impossible, Ben barely restrained himself. He apologized to James and said that there had been a small misunderstanding. "It's not such a small one, partner," replied James, "but I won't make a big deal out of it. I know how stubborn children can be. However, my advice to you, rein in your daughter. I understand that she grew up without a mother, and you were too soft with her. But really, see where it's led." Of course, Andre understood that the absence of a mother would make itself felt someday, but he didn't think it would be so difficult. Monica could have persuaded her daughter, he was sure of that. But Monica had been gone for many years, and now his task was to try to achieve her obedience himself. For this, he needed all the patience he had. When the car stopped near the restaurant, Scarlett was the first to get out, not waiting for her father to come out and offer her his hand. Ben understood that his daughter was in a fighting mood. "Wait," he said when Scarlett was heading towards the restaurant entrance. The girl stopped and looked at her father defiantly. "I understand you don't like all this, but believe me, it will be better this way. When you accept his proposal, you'll be provided for life, and you won't have to worry about anything. It will be better for all of us. You won't embarrass me in front of everyone, right? You understand what will happen if you refuse again." Scarlett looked at her father. Her face showed nothing. "Yes, I understand," she replied. Ben smiled. "That's my girl. I'm glad we understand each other. Let's go." At the table in the VIP zone, Xavier and his father James were already sitting. When Scarlett saw them, she realized that her appearance would certainly cause them bewilderment, but wouldn't change their intentions. She felt foolish. Hello. Are you feeling unwell? You look a bit pale today, dear, asked James, taking the girl by the hand. Scarlett smiled slightly, but the smile turned out strained. Yes, I haven't been feeling well since morning. I'm feeling better now. When she sat down, Xavier leaned towards her and whispered, I think you look just wonderful. I could just eat you up, he said. Scarlett felt nauseous. Why did she come here? She had only one intention, to publicly refuse Xavier's proposal, thereby embarrassing her father, who assured James that his daughter agreed to the wedding. But she hadn't thought about what this would lead to. Her father would never forgive her for public disgrace, that's for sure. And if their relationship with James were to deteriorate because of this? Why should I care about this? Flashed through her mind. Let her father deal with it himself. They brewed this mess. Let them sort it out themselves. They had dinner. Scarlett couldn't swallow a bite, but she poked around in each dish, pretending to eat. During dinner, they talked about unrelated topics, in which Scarlett almost didn't participate, no matter how much her father tried to involve her in the conversation. The girl was waiting for the moment when Xavier would propose to her again. Ben saw that his daughter was tense. Finally, the waiter brought a bottle of expensive champagne and 4 glasses. He placed them on the table. Scarlett realized that the moment had come. Now Xavier would give a speech. However, she was mistaken. James stood up. His voice sounded solemn. My dear son, partner, and Scarlett, we are gathered here today for a very important reason. I won't keep you in suspense for long. I'll say right away that I cherish each of you, and I am very pleased that our relationship can move to a closer level. I have deep respect for you, Andre, and I'm glad it's mutual. I hope we can continue to be on this same level. Xavier supports me, and I think it's no secret to anyone that our relationship is also beneficial for him. Therefore, it is with great pleasure that I ask for your daughter's hand for my son Xavier. Scarlett was speechless. She didn't expect this at all. She understood that everyone present knew why they were gathered here, but she thought Xavier would ask for her hand. She could refuse him. But no one was asking her at the moment. James wasn't even looking at her, and Xavier wasn't looking at her. Everyone was looking at her father, and no one intended to take her opinion into account, as if the meeting and conversation were a mere formality, as if everything had long been decided. Ben smiled, looking at his partner. He was glad that everything turned out this way. Now he would gladly accept their proposal. He also stood up and said with a smile, James, you know how much I enjoy working with you. I'm glad there's an opportunity to strengthen our relationship not only on paper, but also through family ties. And I'm happy to accept your proposal and give my only daughter, Scarlett, to your son. There was a sharp sound that made Scarlett flinch. It was Xavier who opened the champagne bottle himself and began pouring the fizzy drink into the glasses. Scarlett looked from one to another. They were all so happy, as if a profitable deal had just been made. Xavier blushed with joy, James grinned contentedly, shaking hands with her father, and her father was simply beaming with happiness. Everything turned out just as he planned. No one even asked her. A deal had been made. She was sold like merchandise, and for everyone it was a profitable deal. For everyone except her. She was the victim. No one even looked at her. The men chatted among themselves, patting each other on the shoulder. Xavier looked at his father with a smug expression. He was proud to have achieved his goal, and Scarlett would be the main trophy in his series of life victories. Scarlett felt a wave of anger rising inside her, about to explode. She realized it was now or never. If she stayed silent now, she wouldn't be able to change anything later. Everyone would continue to boss her around and command her. She would forever voluntarily lock herself in a golden cage and live with a man she didn't love, who would never make her happy. Xavier handed her a glass of champagne. Everyone was already holding their glasses. Only she remained. Scarlett looked at the glass, watching the bubbles rise from the bottom to the top. No, she said firmly. Ben frowned and looked at his daughter. James gave her a puzzled look. Xavier, still smiling, continued to offer her the glass. "What no?" asked James. Scarlett gathered her courage and, looking at James, said, "No, I won't marry your son." Silence fell. The smile disappeared from Xavier's face and he looked at his father in fear. Ben looked at his daughter with anger. "What do you mean you won't marry?" Xavier's father asked again. Scarlett felt her lips dry from anxiety. She licked them. "It means I don't want to marry Xavier and won't. I didn't give my consent to this marriage and never will. So I see no reason for celebration." James frowned and looked at Ben. Scarlett finally looked into her father's eyes. She got goosebumps from his gaze. She realized she was in for a grand scandal. She had never defied her father publicly, and now she had embarrassed him with her disobedience. But she couldn't resign herself to others deciding her fate for her. "What does this mean, Andre?" James said coldly. Ben looked away from his daughter and at his partner. "I'm very sorry. A terrible misunderstanding has occurred. I failed to handle something. I should have listened to your advice, James. But I intend to resolve everything as quickly as possible. Please forgive us. We need to talk to our daughter in private. Unfortunately, our celebration will have to be postponed. I'm sure the situation will be resolved quickly. I assure you, I intend to resolve this very quickly. Scarlett, please stand up and follow me." Scarlett silently stood up and followed her father. She realized that her father had never been so angry before. She had truly pushed him to the limit. In the car, they rode in silence, but Scarlett felt the waves of anger emanating from her father. She felt them physically, and it made her uncomfortable. When they arrived, her father grabbed her hand, squeezed it painfully, and dragged her into his office. Scarlett barely held back tears of resentment and fear. When they were in the office, her father pushed her into a chair and closed the door. Then he approached her, grabbed the armrests, and almost growled, "What are you doing? How dare you behave like this? What right do you have to disgrace me like this?" Scarlett, with trembling lips, said, "Well, what are you doing? How dare you give an answer for me? What right do you have to decide my fate?" Ben growled and slammed his fists on the armrests. "God, you are completely uncontrollable. Where does this stubbornness and disobedience come from in you? And why do you think I should be obedient and controllable? I'm not 5 years old, not even 10. I'm a grown woman. I'm not going to follow your lead. I want to control my own life." Ben laughed unpleasantly. His laughter wasn't sincere. He behaved this way deliberately to humiliate Scarlett. "Oh, so you're grown up and independent. Then why don't you go to work? Why do you sit on my neck, spend my money, live in my house? Can't you then provide for yourself if you're so independent?" Scarlett almost choked. She silently looked at her father. "What? Nothing to say. Why did you suddenly fall silent when the conversation turned to money? And I know why. Because you're nothing without it. And without money, no one will marry you. Look, my dear, you'll play around too much. Your stubbornness is already sitting in my liver. And I'll tell you this, either you marry Xavier or pack your things and get lost. I'm giving you one last chance. You have a week to think, and then, please, make a final choice. Now you know the consequences of your choice, and you won't have another chance to change anything. I've said everything. Now go to your room and think it over. Starting tomorrow, the countdown begins. Get out of my sight. I can't look at you." "Mum would never do this to me," Scarlett replied in a trembling voice. "She would listen to my wishes and wouldn't let you do what I don't want." Andre looked at his daughter, then quietly but coldly said, "Your mother is dead. She's not with us." Scarlett couldn't say anything out of resentment. She looked at her father for a while, who was staring out the window, then suddenly jumped up and ran to her room. Only when she locked herself in her room did she allow herself to cry. Why is her father acting like this? Doesn't he love her? Doesn't he want her to be happy? Doesn't he understand that she doesn't love Xavier? And she wants to find her love. Yes, no matter how naive it sounds, she believes in love. She knew that her parents loved each other. After her mother's death, her father never managed to love anyone else. Scarlett wanted to love someone like that too. And she didn't like Xavier. He didn't love her either. Yes, maybe he liked her very much, but only as a beautiful toy and nothing more. Scarlett groaned. Her father had put her in a hopeless situation. He knew that without his support, Scarlett couldn't live. She was used to not worrying about anything. And if he deprived her of money, she'd be nothing, a nobody. What should she do? Will she really have to marry someone she doesn't love and suffer for the rest of her life? No, that must not happen. She would never marry Xavier. She'd rather marry the first person she meets than that self-satisfied, pompous, narcissistic turkey. Scarlett couldn't sleep for a long time. Her eyes were so swollen from crying that she couldn't blink. She kept replaying all possible ways out of this situation in her head, but she couldn't figure out how to avoid the hateful wedding. Only towards morning did she fall into a restless sleep. When Scarlett woke up in the morning, her father was already gone. The girl spent about an hour getting herself in order. Finally, she looked quite presentable to leave the house. She didn't want to stay home. She needed freedom, fresh air, people, society. She got dressed and went to the shopping centre. At first, she walked around the stores trying to distract herself, but she was in a terrible mood. Scarlett realised that she was about to snap at one of the consultants who followed her around in every boutique. So she went to a cafe to have some coffee. Maybe she'd order her favourite drink, and some useful thoughts would come to mind. When she entered the cafe, she immediately headed to her favourite table by the window. But, to her disappointment, it was occupied. A guy was sitting there looking at the menu. Apparently, he had just sat down. The table was empty. He hadn't had time to order anything yet. Scarlett was in such a foul mood that she decided to spoil someone else's day. Since this guy took her favourite table, he'd get a dose of negativity from her. She quickly approached him. Stopping by the table, she said sternly, without even greeting, "You've taken my table, please vacate it." The guy looked up and examined her from head to toe. For some reason, Scarlett felt strange. He looked at the table, then said, "I didn't see that the table was reserved." There was no sign. His voice was pleasant, but Scarlett didn't pay attention to it. She snorted and replied. Then the waiter forgot to put up the sign. "I will complain. But that doesn't change anything. I've always sat here. And now I will sit here. You'll have to move to another table." "Can't you sit at another table?" the guy asked. Scarlett pursed her lips. "No, I won't sit there. You'll sit there and I'll sit here. Will you free up the table?" The guy looked at her again carefully, then glanced towards the free table, blushed, and replied, "All right. I'll move if you really need this table." "No, I don't need it. I just want to sit here," Scarlett replied sharply. The guy didn't say anything. He took his denim jacket from the chair and got up. After looking at Scarlett one more time, he went to another table. And then Scarlett felt herself blushing treacherously. The guy was limping. She felt more ashamed than she had ever felt in her life. She wanted to call out to him, to say that he could sit there, but the guy reached the other table quite swiftly, which was not far at all. She watched as he sat down. He looked at her, and she immediately averted her gaze. Scarlett sat at the table and felt her face burning. She sat facing the guy but didn't look at him. A waiter approached her. She ordered coffee and a croissant. While waiting for her order, she pretended to be studying something on her phone. In reality, she was observing the guy out of the corner of her eye. He wasn't looking at her anymore. He also placed an order and then just looked out the window. His gaze was sad. At first, Scarlett thought he was waiting for a girl, but when his order arrived, she saw that he had ordered only for one person. He was slowly eating chocolate ice cream, washing it down with tea. Scarlett tried to distract herself from thoughts about the guy she had driven away, but she kept glancing at him involuntarily. What interested her so much about him? He was dressed simply, nothing unusual. He didn't have an expensive watch on his wrist, and his phone was an old model. Scarlett saw it when he took it out of his pocket for a minute, just an ordinary guy. But something about him attracted her. His limp. And then Scarlett thought, if only my father could get such a son-in-law so he would know how to go against his daughter's wishes, she thought. And then an idea came to her mind. What if I really get married? To a guy like him? I'll get married, and then I'll present my father with a fait accompli. Then he won't be able to do anything, and I'll show him that I won't let myself be bossed around. And he won't be able to say a word anymore because she will already be married, and that annoying Xavier will leave her alone. Finally. Scarlett stared at the guy so intently, lost in thought, that she didn't notice how he was also looking at her without taking his eyes off. When Scarlett realized that they had just been staring at each other for several minutes, she blushed again. Then she decided to act. She took her cup, her bag, and approached the table. "Sorry, do you mind if I sit with you?" she said. The guy shrugged and replied, "I don't mind. Sit down." Scarlett sat down and then said to him, "I'm sorry for the way I behaved. To be honest, I was in such a foul mood that I needed to take it out on someone. Please forgive me for what I did. I didn't actually reserve that table. Yes, I like to sit there, but if it's occupied, I just sit somewhere else. I'm very ashamed. I embarrassed myself and hurt you." The guy smirked. "No, you didn't hurt me. You just acted strangely. Honestly, I thought I was dealing with a hysterical person. It seemed to me that if I didn't agree to move, you would fall to the floor and start screaming, kicking your legs in the air, or grabbing my hair, scratch my face with your nails. I decided it was better to yield to you." Scarlett gasped, her eyes wide open. "What? I gave that impression? Horrible." The guy couldn't help but laugh. "I'm joking, nothing like that happened. I just saw that you were very upset about something and didn't want to add to your distress. That's all." Scarlett squinted suspiciously. He really looked quite serious. It seemed like he wasn't joking anymore. "Thank you. You've reassured me." "My name is Liam," he said, and extended his hand to her. Scarlett smiled and shook it. "And my name is Scarlett. It's very nice to meet you." They started talking. Scarlett didn't tell him much about herself, and Liam didn't ask. But she learned a lot about him. Liam lived on the outskirts of the city with his mother. He didn't have a father. He left them when Liam was only 6 years old. Since then, the guy became his mother's main helper. He barely finished school, not because he was dumb. On the contrary, he was smart and capable, but he had little time for studying. He worked a lot, helped his mother, taking on male responsibilities. Life forced him to grow up early. He didn't complain, just wanted to help his mother so that she would be less tired and suffer less. Liam didn't want to replace his father but tried to become the main helper in the family. And he succeeded. When he finished school, he was immediately drafted into the army. He was very worried about how his mother would cope alone, but she managed. After the army, Liam learned to drive a tractor and became a tractor driver. He worked in the fields, in villages, always finding work. He had been working like this for more than 10 years, living with his mother in their small, modest house. Scarlett listened to him and became more and more convinced that she had never met such a simple and modest guy. Of course, she always moved only in the company of rich, spoiled brats, and didn't even consider ordinary guys as people. They were nothing to her. If someone had ever told her that she would sit in a cafe with an ordinary poor guy like this, she would have spat in that person's face for such an insult. But now she didn't recognize herself. She was sitting here listening to a guy she had never seen before. A guy who earned in a month what she could spend on one lunch. And the main thing was he talked about himself without a hint of embarrassment or shame. There was no pride in his behavior. He just honestly talked about his life, not embellishing anything. His sincerity completely disarmed her. Liam was also impressed by Scarlett. He realized that she was not a simple girl. Of course, he didn't understand brands, jewelry, and other details, but he immediately noticed that she was from a wealthy family. However, it didn't matter to him. He liked her a lot. "Do you want to go to the park tomorrow? Take a walk," Liam suggested. Scarlett wanted to say that she had never just walked in the park with such a simple guy. She couldn't even imagine what it would look like. But then she thought about her father. Great! I will look exactly as my father deserves next to Liam, she thought, and, smiling, replied, Of course I want to. Yes, I'll go to the park with you. I'd love to, Scarlett said. When they parted, agreeing on the next meeting, Scarlett felt some anxiety. What was she doing? Why was she using this pleasant, sociable, and life-beaten guy? After all, he was not to blame for her quarrel with her father. Liam looked at her sincerely, and she was trying to hurt her father, to cause him trouble with his help. Of course her father deserved it, but Liam did not. He had already suffered enough in life, but she couldn't stop anymore. She had to see it through to the end, especially since she had already agreed to a date, so to speak. She couldn't back out now. And Scarlett couldn't even admit to herself that she really liked this guy. And she wanted to meet him because she felt like a real, ordinary girl with him. She didn't even meet her father in the evening. He came home late and immediately locked himself in the office. She sat in her room until night. The next day she met Liam again. Time flew by unnoticed. They walked a little at first. Scarlett even stopped noticing his limp. It was so interesting with him. She laughed all the time because he told her many funny stories from his life. Most of them weren't quite funny, rather sad, but Liam could turn his stories in such a way that it was impossible to hold back laughter. Then he paid for 2 tickets, and they rode the Ferris wheel. And then Scarlett suggested they eat ice cream. She saw how Liam tensed up and said that since he paid for the tickets, she would treat him to ice cream. He didn't resist. During their conversation, Scarlett noticed that Liam looked at her strangely, as if something interested him, but he didn't ask anything. They sat on a bench for a long time, talking about everything in the world. Scarlett had never felt so easy and good. Then she called a taxi home and offered to give Liam a ride first, but he categorically refused. They agreed to meet again the next day. Scarlett, in high spirits, returned home. She tried not to think about what awaited her in just a couple of days. Of course, she probably behaved foolishly and frivolously, and she needed to find a way to get out of marriage. But she enjoyed the company of a guy who was now constantly on her mind. Her father had given her a choice, but she didn't want to make it. Exactly 5 days later, Scarlett realized she had fallen in love with Liam. Yes, too little time had passed to confidently talk about serious feelings, but Scarlett had never felt anything like this before. She was overwhelmed by new feelings and she couldn't handle them. And then she decided to tell Liam the truth. She told him that she was rich and that her father was forcing her to marry someone she didn't love. That she was resisting with all her might, but her father was trying to achieve his goal through blackmail. And that she was very unhappy because she liked Liam. She talked a lot, not realizing why she was doing it. The words just flowed, and she kept talking and talking. Liam listened attentively, without interrupting. When Scarlett finished her story, she sighed and quietly asked, "Do you think I'm hysterical?" Liam shook his head. "No, I don't think so. I just think how unhappy rich people are. After all, they don't belong to themselves. They serve their wealth, which they fear losing. They do everything to strengthen their position in society, and even forget that life passes so quickly. I'm sorry your father is forcing you to do what you don't want to. I'm very glad you are trying to live life the way you want. However, most likely, you still won't have a choice. You won't be able to live differently." Scarlett was surprised by his reasoning and said what she wanted to say from the beginning, only now it was sincere. "Max, I want you to meet my father. I really like you. I want to prove to him that I don't need this marriage at all. I want to prove that I met a good person who deserves to be, for starters, my friend. Maybe he will change his mind when he talks to you. I don't want to spoil relations with him, but I want him to understand that I won't be happy with someone I don't love. I need a completely different person. Maybe he will understand this when he sees how we communicate. Please don't refuse me. Unless you're afraid to meet my father, I won't blame you. It's your right. But if you help me, I will be very happy." Liam thought for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I agree." Partly he wanted to prove to a wealthy person that there are many worthy people among the poor. And partly because he really liked Scarlett, Liam just couldn't part with her. But he understood. They would inevitably part if her father forced her to marry. "Then until tomorrow?" she asked with a smile. But Liam shook his head. "Why wait for tomorrow? Let's do it today. I'm ready to meet him right now. What do you think?" Scarlett didn't expect everything to happen so quickly. However, maybe Liam was right. There was no need to postpone the meeting, to delay, so to speak, her death. She called a taxi and they went to her house. When they arrived, Scarlett saw the light in her father's office. So he was home. Well, excellent. The moment of truth had come. They entered the house. Liam was stunned by the luxury surrounding him. He could not imagine that Scarlett was so rich. Now he slightly regretted agreeing to this meeting. It was unlikely that such a wealthy person would listen to his daughter's complaints. With such wealth, people get used to their whims and desires being fulfilled without question. Most likely Scarlett won't be able to change anything, he thought. She is part of this system and will never break free. "Are you ready?" Scarlett whispered. "Ready." They went to Ben's office. When Scarlett carefully knocked on the door, a loud voice was heard. "Come in!" They exchanged glances and Scarlett opened the door. Her father was sitting at the table, his head down at work. Scarlett and Liam exchanged glances again, and then she said, "Hi, Dad." Ben greeted her warmly. "Hi, daughter." "Dad, I need to introduce you to someone," Scarlett continued. Ben raised his head and confusion appeared in his eyes. Hearing his daughter's calm voice, he thought she had come to terms with her fate. But when he saw that she had brought someone with her, he felt the approach of trouble. "Dad, meet Liam, my friend." Liam greeted him, and Ben, after a pause, said, looking at his daughter, "What are you up to?" Scarlett swallowed the lump in her throat. "Dad, I want you to talk to Liam." Ben glanced at the guy again, greeted him sparingly, and then said, "Young man, I really need to talk to my daughter alone right now. Please be so kind as to leave us. You can wait in the hall until we finish our conversation." "No, Liam, you'll stay here," Scarlett said firmly, looking at the guy. But Liam wasn't looking at her. He and Scarlett's father were staring at each other. Then Liam nodded and left the office. Ben noticed that the guy was limping and frowned even more. When Liam left, Andre looked at his daughter. "I understand you intend to continue to disgrace me? Who did you bring into the house, Scarlett? You know, sometimes I get the impression that you're not my daughter at all. My daughter wouldn't behave like this." "I brought someone into the house who I like, and I want to marry him. Do you understand? Not now. Not immediately. Maybe later, when our feelings grow stronger. I just want to explain to you, Father, that I'm absolutely not attracted to Xavier. I don't need him. Liam treats me much better and more sincerely than your Xavier." Ben smirked. "Marry? To this simpleton? Excuse me, how long have you known each other, may I ask?" Scarlett barely held her father's gaze. "That's not important, Father. I'm asking when you met. Recently. What does it matter? Do you hear what I'm telling you? I want to marry him. Just like that." "What does he represent? Did you see? He's poor. I can sense it from a mile away. Will he be able to provide for you, satisfy your needs? What can he give you? And he's lame, didn't you notice? Scarlett, why are you doing this? Why are you ruining your life? I want to arrange for you so that you never need anything, and now you're presenting me with a fait accompli. So you've made your choice, I understand. Father, listen to me. Answer my question. You won't marry Xavier? You want to be with this guy you brought to my office?" "No, I won't marry Xavier. Yes, I want to be with this guy. Did you finally understand?" Scarlett shouted. "And it didn't occur to you that this guy only needs your money?" "No, he's not like that. He didn't know I was rich until I told him myself." "Is that so? You told him yourself? Really? As if it wasn't obvious that you're not poor. I don't think he's completely stupid. He looks smart and cunning. So, my dear, it's you who turned out to be foolish among everyone." Scarlett shouted, "That's not true. I'm not foolish." And why are you saying that? He doesn't care about my money, I know for sure. We talked about it. A silence hung in the air. Ben said nothing. They looked at each other, 2 generations. Then Ben's expression changed, and he quietly said, "If he's so good, then live with him. Let him provide for you now. Pack your things and go with him right today. Just don't expect any help from me anymore. I won't support you, give you money, or do anything for you. Do you understand me? You've made your choice. I accept it. But you knew the conditions. You knew what awaited you. We have nothing more to talk about." Scarlett turned pale. He was kicking her out of the house. He said it seriously. How could he? And where would she go? He knew she had nowhere to go. She had known Liam for less than a week. Was there anything binding them? No, she was nobody to him. He wasn't obliged to take responsibility for her. She would just end up on the street. If none of her friends took her in, she would just end up on the street. And how long would this last? Scarlett knew how long, until she agreed to marry Xavier. Only then would all these torments stop. "You can't do this to me," she exclaimed. "I can," her father replied shortly. Scarlett proudly raised her head. "Fine, have it your way. I'll do as you say," she said, and went to the door. When she already grabbed the door handle, her father said, "Oh, Scarlett, you could have at least found yourself a rich groom. He would at least support you. And you chose a pauper. What will you do with him? He doesn't suit you at all." Scarlett froze and without turning to her father replied sadly, "I'm very sorry that you didn't understand anything. If Mum were alive, she would have made you understand. But when Mum died, something died in you too. Now I understand that. Maybe you'll understand it later. Or maybe you'll never understand. I'm sorry for you." Ben said nothing, but his eyes became moist. However, Scarlett didn't see it. She left, closing the door behind her. Ben watched her leave for a long time, pondering her last words. When Liam saw Scarlett, he understood that something particularly unpleasant had happened. Scarlett told him everything. She was ashamed of her father, but she couldn't keep quiet. "I can't believe he did this. He kicked me out. I didn't think he was capable of this. I thought he would calm down, and we would somehow come to a compromise. It's just unbelievable. How can you do this to your only child?" "Okay, I'll have to call my friends now. I'll have to stay with one of them for now until we sort things out with my father. Can you help me move my things?" Liam nodded affirmatively. However, Scarlett was in for an unpleasant surprise. None of her close friends could take her in. One friend refused because their fathers were on good terms, and she was afraid that Ben's anger would spill over onto her. Another friend was in Europe. The third lived with her boyfriend and didn't want anyone else in their lives. And another friend, out of malice, said so many nasty things that it seemed she had been waiting for this moment all her life. Without her father's money, Scarlett was of no use to anyone. She cried out of resentment. She realized that she had no one to support her in a difficult moment, and this made her feel even more hurt. Then Liam quietly said, "If you want, you can come to me. We have enough space, we can always feed you. Mum won't mind. She always helped other people. She will be happy to help you. Don't worry, I won't claim anything, and I don't need any gratitude. Live as long as you want. No one will kick you out. And then, we'll see what you should do next." Scarlett looked at Liam and was amazed at his kindness and selflessness. And she agreed. She immediately packed a few suitcases with things. It took her about 2 hours. Then she laid all her bank cards on the table in the hall. She only took some savings she had and a little cash in her wallet. Without saying goodbye to her father, she left with Liam in a taxi to his home. Liam's mother turned out to be a wonderful woman. She accepted Scarlett without any questions. She just looked at her son attentively because he hadn't even warned her that he would come with a guest. When Liam brought Scarlett's suitcases into the house, Linda frowned and looked at the girl's belly. However, her son hurried to reassure her. "Mum, this is Scarlett. She is a very good friend of mine. She has problems with her father. They are forcing her to marry someone she doesn't love, and she refused. Her father kicked her out of the house. She has nowhere to live, and no one wants to help her because her father won't support her financially. And I want to help her. She will live with us. Okay? You don't mind, do you, Mom? Linda smiled. Why would I be against it? If someone needs help, do we not have enough food for 3? Scarlett smiled sadly. Thank you. Call me daughter. I don't mind. I don't have a mom. She died when I was little. I'm glad someone will call me daughter. If you don't mind, of course. Linda clapped her hands. Oh, how sad. Of course I don't mind. Well, let me show you where you can settle down. We don't have much space, but you'll be cozy. Trust me. Linda gave Scarlett her workroom where she usually sewed, embroidered, and drew. There was a small couch where Scarlett could sleep. Linda quickly put away all the unnecessary things, took her embroidery and patterns. Only the sewing machine remained, which could replace Scarlett's dressing table. All evening the girl tried to sort through the suitcases to get the necessary things. She looked at her dresses, which she had taken with hangers, in confusion. Where to put them now? Where to hang them? And in general, why are they needed here? Where to go in them? With whom and why? She thought, remembering how she packed her things. She put the dresses in one suitcase, opened another, filled with jeans, t-shirts, and sportswear. This kind of clothing will definitely come in handy. It's good that I have a few sneakers, Scarlett thought. Time passed, and Scarlett almost became a member of her new family. Liam worked on his tractor, and Scarlett spent all the rest of the time with him. They were together outside in the garden. At first, Scarlett just watched how he worked and was amazed at how easily a lame person performed such hard work. And he always smiled and was kind, no matter how tired he was. Scarlett fell more and more in love with Liam. She had already forgotten about the quarrel with her father. He didn't call her, and she didn't call him either. Every day the girl became more convinced that she had never met a stronger, gentler, kinder, and more devoted guy. Liam had only one flaw, if it could be called a flaw. He had no money. He was poor. But even this stopped bothering Scarlett when she was convinced of how many virtues he had. One day, Liam almost fell off a ladder when he was climbing onto the roof to replace the rotten shingles. When Scarlett saw how he was trying to catch his balance, she screamed in fright and then covered her mouth. When Liam came down to the ground, she jumped to him and hugged him tightly. "What's wrong, Scarlett?" "Why are you scared?" he asked, laughing and not knowing how to react to her embrace. "I was scared. I was very scared, Max. I was afraid of losing you, that something would happen to you. For a few moments I was so scared, as if I was on the brink of life and death. If something happened to you, I couldn't." Scarlett couldn't finish. The overwhelming emotions choked her voice. Liam's lips trembled, and he hugged her tightly, pressing her to him. They stood like that for a long time, hugging. Linda wanted to hang laundry outside, but seeing these two, she smiled mysteriously and went back inside. The laundry can wait, but spoiling such a moment is categorically impossible, she thought. Hugging Liam, Scarlett realized that she couldn't live without this guy. She loved him so much that she didn't care about the whole world. She was ready to live the life she would have if she tied her life to him forever. And she didn't care about her father. She loved. She truly loved. And let the whole world wait. Then Liam slightly moved away from her, took her face in his hands, and kissed her. They kissed for a long time, standing in the middle of the yard. Then Liam quietly said, "I love you." Scarlett smiled, closed her eyes, and pressed against him with her whole body. "And I love you," she whispered softly. That night, they became close. It was the best night of Scarlett's life because she spent it with the person she loved. Linda realized that now there was indeed one more person in their family, and she was happy for her son because Scarlett, though not adapted to life, turned out to be a good girl. They lived modestly, ate the most ordinary food. Scarlett wasn't used to this, but she liked how Linda cooked. From simple products, she could create dishes that could be served in a restaurant. Scarlett didn't know how to cook, so she watched in surprise how deftly Liam's mom worked with her hands. Do you want me to teach you to cook? Linda suggested. Scarlett refused in fright. Oh, Linda, I'm afraid it's useless. I look at you and understand that I'll probably never master this art. You do everything so well, and I can't even hold a knife properly. I can't even peel potatoes. I won't be able to do anything. Do you think everyone gets it right away? Start with the simplest things. Just try peeling potatoes, Linda said with a smile. Scarlett looked at her fingers with long nails. She couldn't even hold a knife properly. No, first I need to get rid of the nails. I won't be able to get a manicure now anyway. So why these claws? She thought. All right, I'll do something first, and in the evening I'll try, Scarlett replied. Linda smiled. She was sure that the girl would succeed. She would quickly learn everything and become a good wife for Liam if they suddenly decided to get married. And Linda felt in her gut that things were heading in that direction. Ben sat in his office at the table frowning, tapping the table with a pen and constantly looking at the clock. He had scheduled a meeting with someone and couldn't wait for the meeting time to come. He sighed and rubbed his eyes with his hand. How tired he was. How tired he was of being nervous, afraid, angry, worried, and hopeful. His daughter evoked all the emotions that a person could have, and he couldn't do anything about it. Andre chuckled bitterly. Who was he kidding? She didn't leave. He kicked her out. It had been 4 months since he heard anything about her. And Ben couldn't bear it anymore. He had to find out everything. At first, he was sure that his daughter would quickly return and bow at his feet. He was sure she wouldn't last a week without his financial support. He was sure she couldn't change her lifestyle. When Scarlett left home with her things, his driver followed them. Andre knew she went to that guy. Then he realized she wasn't joking when she said she liked him. That poor guy really appealed to her. Ben thought that life in an ordinary small house on the outskirts of the city would quickly knock the pride out of his daughter, and she would just crawl back, begging him to marry her off to Xavier. However, everything went awry. Andre was going to find out how his daughter was doing and what she was up to. His relationship with James became strained, and the reason for that was Scarlett, or rather the uncertainty related to her absence. One day, James asked his partner, "So, what about our offer, Andre? Is your daughter still thinking?" Andre honestly explained to his partner that his daughter had gone into voluntary forced exile. And until she came to terms with her fate, until she understood what was best for her, until she listened to her father, she wouldn't return. James liked this method of upbringing. "I told you, partner, that you should knock that pride out of her. I think you chose the right path. Keep it up, Andre. Keep it up. Everything will be fine. You'll see." No, but Andre was already doubting whether his methods of upbringing were affecting Scarlett. She grew up to be an unusual girl, as if she wasn't his daughter. Although he understood where it all came from. She was very much like her mother. Only Scarlett didn't know this because she barely remembered her. Finally, the hour of the meeting struck. Ben settled more comfortably in his chair. A few minutes later, his driver peeked into the office. "Ben, your visitor is here. You were expecting him, right?" Yes, let him in." A short man entered the office. He was quite young, but his cunning, sharp gaze revealed a true professional. It was a private detective. "Have a seat, Orson, have a seat." Ben indicated a chair for him. Orson sat down, looked around, then politely smiled. "I'm very glad, Ben, that you've turned to me again. It means my services really satisfy you." Andre grimaced. A few years ago, he had already turned to Orson. At that time, he suspected his partner of deception, so he set up surveillance to make sure he was wrong. His suspicions were not confirmed. Orson thoroughly investigated everything, and Andre trusted him. "Yes, more than satisfy. This time I need you to follow a certain person. Or rather, I need you to find out everything about her lifestyle. What she does, what she engages in, where she goes, how she dresses, who she communicates with. Everything. I need to know absolutely everything about her, up to what she eats, what she does at home, and who she sleeps with, if she doesn't sleep alone. Well, can you organize this? Orson looked attentively at the client. Interesting. This is something more serious than the last case, he thought. Orson especially loved such cases, delving into someone else's personal life. Dirty laundry almost gave him aesthetic pleasure, especially when he found something particularly vile. He enjoyed penetrating other people's secrets and being their keeper. So can you organize this? Andre repeated. The detective smiled slightly and replied smoothly, Of course I can. It's part of my job. I just need a bit more information, at least the full name, age, nationality. In general, everything possible. You need to follow my daughter, Andre said quietly. Orson, if he was surprised, didn't show it. His face remained absolutely calm. He just nodded and waited. Ben listed all the information he knew, where his daughter was living now, the name of the guy helping her, and this person's distinctive features. The detective carefully wrote everything down in his notebook. 15 minutes later, Orson closed the notebook, clicked the pen, and put it in his pocket. Well, it's all clear to me what you need. I think I won't have to investigate for long. I'll call you in a week to report the first results of the observation. All week, Ben couldn't find peace. Every day he thought more and more about his daughter and became more convinced that he needed to somehow persuade her to leave everything and marry Xavier. 5 days later, the detective called him. I'm ready to provide full information about your daughter and her life, he said. A couple of hours later, Orson was already in Andre's office. Well, tell me quickly. I'm listening to you attentively, Andre said. The detective smiled. He had a phenomenal memory, so he presented all the information verbally, as well as in written form, handing Andre a detailed folder. Your daughter lives with a guy named Liam and his mother. He's 30 years old. He doesn't have a father. He left the family a long time ago. The guy has never been noticed in fights or illegal activities. He takes care of the house and works. He served in the army, then learned to drive a tractor. Works. Linda, his mother, works from home. Embroiders, sews simple clothes to order, takes care of the garden. Simple, modest people, nothing special. Your daughter has been living with them all this time. She hardly goes anywhere, doesn't meet with friends. If she goes to the city, it's only with Liam. They behave like a loving couple. Your daughter helps Liam's mother in the garden and does it voluntarily and with pleasure. She is happy. This can't be. She lives like an ordinary person and she's happy? No, this just can't be. Orson frowned slightly. Do you doubt the reliability of my information? My competence? Look at the folder. There are photos that will convince you that your daughter is quite happy. Ben shook his head. No, I'm not doubting you. I'm doubting my daughter. Thank you for the information. I'll definitely review everything. Andre took a bundle of banknotes from the drawer and pushed it to the edge of the table. Is this enough? The detective took the money and politely said, This is enough. Thank you for your cooperation. As always, the information I obtained and our relationship will remain completely confidential. Confidentiality is a key component of my work. Goodbye. The detective left. Andre thoughtfully flipped through the folder and looked at the photos in bewilderment. In them, his daughter was indeed smiling and looked happy. But she had also changed externally. A tracksuit, a bun on her head, no makeup, hands dirty with earth. Scarlet and dirty hands? That's incompatible. What happened to her? Ben realized that he had only one option. He had to go to them to see everything for himself. He had to see with his own eyes what was happening with his daughter. For a couple of days, he pondered whether to go or not, and then he decided that he couldn't delay this matter any longer. He called his daughter. When he dialed her number, he didn't expect her to answer, but she did. Yes, Dad. Hi. Hi, Scarlett. How are you? I'm fine. Honestly, I'm glad you called. I wanted to call myself for a long time, but I didn't know if you would answer or not. Ben felt tears welling up in his eyes. How he missed her. Scarlett, I'm very sorry that everything happened the way it did with us. I would like to come. To meet you. Come to me? Are you sure? Andre was sure because only in this way would he find out the truth about his daughter's life. Yes. Scarlett was surprised that her father wanted to see her at Liam's house, but she decided to meet him halfway. You can come even today. An hour later, Ben was already near Liam's house. He looked with disdain at the old house. And my daughter lives here? Interesting. How does she manage to be so happy in the photos? The gate opened and Scarlett peered out. Hello, Dad. Come in. Ben looked at his daughter in amazement. She looked much younger than her years. She was wearing an apron, and it was all covered in flour. When he entered the house, Liam came out to meet him. Hello, Ben. Welcome. Meet my mum. This is Linda Dot. Andre greeted the woman, who smiled shyly at him. Scarlett invited him to the table. Just a couple more minutes, and everything will be ready, she said mysteriously. Andre examined the modest furnishings of the house. Everything seemed shabby to him. However, he couldn't help but admit that everything was clean and tidy. There were no unpleasant smells, and it smelled of baking, as if something tasty had just been cooked. A couple of minutes later, his daughter brought a dish with a pie into the room. It had just been taken out of the oven. Dad, this is an apple pie. I made it myself. Linda taught me, and I succeeded on the first try, can you imagine? But I had to get rid of my nails. I couldn't handle the dough with them. But I don't regret it. Only now did I understand how convenient it is without them, Scarlett said with a smile. Andre looked at her, unable to believe his eyes. The detective hadn't lied. His daughter was indeed happy. She was happy without his money. She didn't need it. She had managed all this time without his financial support because Liam worked. He supported the whole family, provided her with the essentials, a roof over her head, food on the table, communication. And Scarlett was content with that. She no longer went to restaurants, preferring to stay home with Linda, who taught her to cook. Andre would never have sat at a table in such a poor house and touched such a pie made with his own hands. But now he was so shocked by what was happening that he couldn't refuse a cup of tea. When they drank tea, Andre said, It was very tasty. Thank you. You surprised me, Scarlett. His daughter smiled. It was clear that she was pleased with herself. The conversation didn't go well. Everyone exchanged glances. Andre realized that Linda probably knew about the quarrel between him and his daughter. He felt awkward and tried to start a conversation. What else can you cook, Scarlett? The girl perked up. It was clear that the topic of cooking interested her very much. Oh, Dad, Linda cooks so well. She has so many ideas in her head. She surprises me every time. I've never eaten so deliciously in any restaurant. She could work in any restaurant as a chef, and such a restaurant wouldn't lack clients. Andre was amazed by his daughter's enthusiasm. Inspiration was written on her face. He even thought that in those moments she was somehow similar to him when he talked about business with the same passion. Silence hung again. Then Andre looked at Liam and unexpectedly asked, Why do you limp, Liam? Were you born like that? Sorry for asking. It's none of my business, of course. Liam, without showing either offence or embarrassment, replied, No, nothing wrong. It's no secret. I wasn't born like that. I was born completely healthy. At 5 years old, a car hit us with my mum. It happened at a pedestrian crossing. Liam paused for a moment as if remembering. I remember the colour of that car, bright blue. But the car immediately fled the scene. There were no witnesses. The culprits of the accident were not found. Although a case was opened. I think the culprits just paid off. This car was never found. I think they got rid of it immediately. Liam continued. Mom got away with bruises and scratches, but I had a serious leg fracture. In childhood, I almost didn't limp. It was almost unnoticeable. But with age, the limp became more pronounced. Doctors said it was the consequences of improper bone fusion. Surgery was needed. Maybe, someday I'll save enough money for this surgery. That's how it is. Ben sat pale and shocked. He couldn't not only utter a word, but he also couldn't breathe normally. Liam's story stirred up terrible memories from his youth, memories that he had tried to bury all his life. But now it all surfaced. For 25 years he had been tormented by one thought. Did the people they hit survive? In his youth, Andre behaved poorly. As soon as he and his best friend Lucas got their licenses, they started speeding around the streets, violating all kinds of rules. On that fateful day, they first got into the bright blue car that Lucas's father had bought. The car hadn't been registered yet. There were no numbers on it. Lucas promised his father not to drive until the car was registered, but he disobeyed. They drove around the city, and Lucas greatly exceeded the speed limit. Even Andre started stopping him. "Lucas, stop driving so fast. Who knows what might happen?" But Lucas just laughed. "Don't worry, buddy. Everything will be fine. What could happen to us?" And then he pressed the gas even harder. And then they saw there was a pedestrian crossing ahead, and some people were walking on it. They didn't even understand who it was. Lucas hit the brakes, but didn't have time to stop completely. They hit the pedestrians. Andre saw that it was a woman with a child in her arms. From horror, they couldn't utter a sound. A couple of seconds after they hit the people, Lucas hit the gas, and they sped forward. "What are you doing, Lucas? We hit people. We shouldn't leave the accident scene. They need our help. Turn back right now," Andre shouted. "Are you crazy? If we killed them, then we'll be jailed, you understand? My father will kill me," Lucas snapped. "If they're alive, if they need help, if they tell who hit them, then your car will be wanted. They'll find us and we'll be jailed." "If your father doesn't kill us first," Andre shouted. But Lucas kept driving forward. "I'll figure something out, don't worry," he said. And he did. He confessed everything to his father. His father didn't kill him but sent him to Europe and got rid of the car. That bright blue car was never seen in the city again. Andre and Lucas never communicated after that accident. And 5 years later, Andre learned that Lucas died in an accident. He exceeded the speed and drove into the oncoming lane. Accidentally or intentionally, no one knew. But Andre knew one thing. That accident never left either of them in peace. Lucas was the culprit. He bore more guilt. But Andre, as an accomplice, also bore its burden. He never told anyone about the accident, and no one else knew about this incident. Andre carried this secret with him all his life, understanding that he would be tormented by the thought that those two died because of them for the rest of his life. However, they didn't die. And now they sat in front of him. He had felt guilt for most of his life for not doing anything then, and now he had a chance to fix everything, or at least ask for forgiveness. Maybe it would make him feel better. "Dad, are you feeling unwell?" Scarlett asked. Andre woke up from his memories. He looked at his daughter. "You've been silent for 5 minutes, and you're so pale. Are you unwell?" Scarlett asked again. Andre shook his head, then looked at Liam and Linda. "Forgive me," he whispered. Liam and Linda exchanged glances. "Forgive for what?" "I don't understand," Linda said. "Forgive me," Ben whispered again. Everyone was silent, looking at each other, and then Andre groaned and covered his face with his hands. "Dad, should I call a doctor? Are you feeling okay? Dad, don't scare me. I'm afraid for you. I don't want to be left without a father," Scarlett fretted. Andre removed his hands from his face and took his daughter's hands in his. "And you forgive me. Forgive me for treating you like that, for not understanding you, for not wanting to listen to your desires. And forgive me for what I'm about to say." He turned to Liam and Linda. "I'm very sorry that you'll have to plunge into these terrible memories again. But I have to tell you everything. I suffered for many years. And now I can confess everything because I met you. I see that you don't understand anything. I speak in riddles. But now you'll understand everything. Please listen to me to the end, and then say whatever you want." Ben told them everything about the accident. He admitted that it was he and his friend who were in that bright blue car, and that it was because of them that Liam limps. He told everything, not hiding a single detail. He also told about his friend's death. Everyone was shocked by what they heard. Linda cried. Liam sat pale and serious, and Scarlett covered her mouth with her hands, horrified by what was happening. When Andre finished his story, a deathly silence hung in the air. He awaited the verdict, looking at his judges, but it was impossible to understand what they were thinking from their faces. Then Linda moved and addressed her son. Liam, what do you think about this? Liam looked at Scarlett. The girl was in tears. She looked at her father with horror. Then she shifted her gaze to Liam, removed her hands from her face, but said nothing. Liam looked at the girl he loved so much, and he understood that no problems could make him give her up. Yes, her father made a terrible mistake in his youth, but in fact, he wasn't the culprit of the accident, and the real culprit had long since paid for what he did. Liam hoped that the guy had been tormented by guilt to the very last moment. Liam sighed, took Scarlett's hand, and said, "Don't cry, my love. Everything will be fine. The worst is behind us. Don't be afraid. My feelings for you won't change because I'm madly in love with you." Then Liam looked at Ben. "I forgive you. I don't hold a grudge against you. Thank you for confessing. It made me feel better to know about the death of the accident's culprit. And you were just there. You didn't cripple me. If you had confessed then, I might never have met your daughter." Liam smiled and added, "I love her very much, and I'm glad you confessed after so many years." Ben was shocked. It was the first time he had met such a noble and kind person. "My God, this is just incredible! Scarlett, you chose the best person in the world. I bow to you. You were right. Yes, your mother wouldn't have acted like that. She would have wanted you to be happy, and she would have persuaded me not to make mistakes. I just forgot what a wonderful woman she was, and you reminded me of that." "Thank you, daughter," he said with emotion. Everyone forgave each other. They sat for a long time, all four of them, in the small but cozy dining room. And then Liam spontaneously asked for Scarlett's hand. The girl cried again for a long time. Too many events had fallen on her in one evening. Ben gave his consent to Scarlett and Liam's marriage, but set one condition that Liam had to fulfill. "I want to fix something. I'm partly responsible for your limp. I want to help you. I'll send you to the best clinic. There you'll be examined, necessary research will be conducted, and if surgery is possible, I'll pay for everything. I want you to recover. And when this happens, you can marry Scarlett. I won't dictate my terms to you anymore. You'll live as you wish. But no, everything I have belongs to Scarlett." Liam initially resisted, but Scarlett persuaded him. She seized this idea with hope and believed that everything would work out. And so it did. Liam successfully underwent surgery, and 6 months later, he returned home completely healthy. All this time, Ben helped Linda. A month after returning, Liam and Scarlett got married. The wedding was modest, with only the groom, the bride, and their parents present. Ben looked at his daughter and regretted that his wife couldn't see this moment. "Mom would be proud of you if she were with us now," he said. Scarlett smiled and hugged her father. "She sees us, Dad. And she's proud of you too, because you've become the best father in the world." After the wedding, Ben thought about changing his business field. James ceased to be his partner as soon as he found out that Scarlett really wouldn't marry his son. However, Andre wasn't upset. He had an idea that he discussed with Scarlett, Liam, and Linda. Everyone liked the idea. Andre sold his share in the company and began preparing to open a new business. Thus began the story of their joint, home-cooked restaurant. Initially, it was a small cafe, but 6 months later, it became the most popular place in the city. Linda managed the kitchen, Ben handled finances, Scarlett took care of design and decoration, and Liam ensured the supply of the best products. Thanks to his connections in the villages, he established regular deliveries of fresh and quality ingredients. The restaurant quickly gained success. It was written about in newspapers, and interviews were taken. All four of them answered journalists' questions. Liam showed himself as a smart and resourceful person. A year after the restaurant opened, Ben realized that he could leave all his wealth and business to his daughter and her husband with a clear conscience. He no longer worried. Scarlett was in reliable hands, and her happiness became his main comfort.